Although they play the good guys on the big screen, some of these stars have broken major Marvel rules behind the scenes. Some of them have done so innocently, while others don't mind letting audiences know what they really feel about working for Marvel. Let's just say Tom Holland, was lucky that he was so hard to get mad at. R.I.P. MCU Spider-Man. Either way, if you thought Thanos was the most malicious character in the MCU, think again. We'll talk about stars who spoiled major plot points and reveal which Marvel movie was an absolute nightmare for everybody working on it. Livestream. We all knew Tom Holland was the up-and-comer when it came to spoiling Marvel movies, but after the recent falling out between Sony and Disney, it doesn't look like he'll ever be able to take the throne from Mark Ruffalo, the original Marvel movie spoiler. We do have to give the guy credit for trying to stay hip and keeping his fans all hyped up about his latest projects. When Thor Ragnarok premiered, Ruffalo decided to do a live stream for his fans, which was a good idea in theory, but a bad idea when he didn't know how to stop the live stream. He put his phone in his pocket without stopping the stream, and ended up broadcasting the first 15 or 20 minutes of the movie. Someone from Disney actually had to rush out to him in the audience and demand he turn off his phone. Getting confronted by Disney has to be pretty terrifying, and Ruffalo admits he was worried about getting fired due to the incident. Seriously, if you're gonna spoil a Thor movie, don't let it be the best one in the franchise so far. But honestly, that pales in comparison to the time Ruffalo completely spoiled Avengers Infinity War during an interview with Good Morning America. While fellow Marvel star Don Cheadle looked on helplessly, Ruffalo exclaimed, "In this next one, how everybody dies." He was clearly going to say half before he tried to correct himself at the last minute. Good save, buddy. Infinity War. The Mad Titan Thanos may have wiped out half of all life in the universe, but it seems like Tom Holland has spoiled half of all MCU movies since he became involved with Marvel Studios. When a crowd gathered at the ArcLight Theater to watch Avengers Infinity War for the first time, Holland took the stage loudly proclaiming that he was still alive. The only problem with this? He did so before the fans had a chance to see the movie and learn about Peter Parker's fate. Whoops. He also revealed a major Avengers Endgame plot point while appearing on the Graham Norton show, where he announced that Spider-Man Far From Home would feature the aftermath of losing Tony Stark. In Holland's defense, Endgame had hit theaters 2 months prior to this interview, and the star felt this was past the spoiler statute of limitations, even if some fans disagreed. And if you thought Far From Home ended with a cliffhanger, don't worry. Despite earlier speculation about the Spider-Man franchise, Tom Holland let it slip in another interview that there will be a third Spider-Man movie. Now, whether that movie will take place in the MCU at this point, well, that's anybody's guess. Replacement. Iron Man was the movie which kicked off the MCU as we know it today. Robert Downey Jr. is a huge star now, and his role as Tony Stark is often credited with reviving his struggling career. Back in 2008, Terrance Howard was considered one of the big names attached to the project, but allegedly had some trouble getting along with the rest of the cast and crew. He's described himself as difficult in the past, and has a reputation for being impulsive and challenging to work with on set. Allegedly, there were some difficulties behind the scenes, and Rhodey's role in Iron Man 2 was cut along with Howard's potential paycheck. When Howard and Marvel couldn't make the numbers work, Howard ended up being replaced by Don Cheadle. Not only has Howard spoken out about the alleged unfairness of this, but he has blamed Robert Downey Jr. for it. He claims Downey ended up with the cash that should have been his. The whole thing turned into the kind of bad publicity Marvel usually tries to avoid. But there is some good news. It seems like Howard and Downey have patched things up after this difficult time in their friendship. The Dark World. Would anyone have cared if Mark Ruffalo spoiled the plot of Thor: The Dark World? It's widely considered one of the weakest entries in the MCU library, and even the stars of the movie couldn't resist talking about how much they hated working on it. Thor Odin's son himself, Chris Hemsworth, has stated that he really didn't enjoy portraying the character in the first 2 movies of the franchise. It wasn't until Ragnarok that he felt like Thor found his voice and became a compelling character. Idris Elba, who plays Thor's bestie Heimdall, also said he didn't enjoy working on the first 2 films. In fact, when he had to return to the set of The Dark World for reshoots, he did so kicking and screaming. Well, metaphorically. He actually begged his agent to get him out of it, but his hands were tied by the contract that he'd signed. Christopher Eccleston played the role of Malekith in the movie and admits he took the part for financial gain and not because of a passion for portraying an evil elf. After he was done filming, Eccleston admitted working on the project was torturous, and claimed Marvel had misled him about how much time he had to spend in the makeup department. Morgan Stark. During Infinity War, Tony Stark tells his then-fiancée Pepper Potts that he dreamed about them having a child together. Although Pepper assured him that she wasn't pregnant, dreams and visions do seem to hold a certain weight in the MCU. But Tony and Pepper having a child seemed even more likely when actress Gwyneth Paltrow spilled the beans about it during an interview. She talked about the journey Pepper and Tony have been on together, and talked about them getting married and having a child, neither of which they did during Infinity War. So when the two of them ended up married and with an adorable daughter during Endgame, it wasn't really a surprise. Then, of course, there's the fact that we all saw a photo of Gwyneth in her rescue armor prior to the release of the movie. Even though Pepper Potts isn't an Avenger, Paltrow managed to spill pretty much everything about her role prior to appearance in Endgame. Filming. We're sure we don't need to explain why Marvel Studios tries to keep spoilers to a minimum. One of their rules is no filming behind the scenes, but even some of their biggest and most popular stars have broken this rule from time to time. Chris Pratt confirmed the no filming rule on Instagram as he shared a video he filmed behind the scenes of Avengers Endgame. Of course, it wasn't very surprising to see stars like Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, or Chris Evans, even if the latter did give us an unsettlingly large grin. But we also caught glimpses of many characters whose fates were left uncertain following Infinity War. There's Paul Rudd, who portrays Scott Lang, Chadwick Boseman, who plays T'Challa, and even a stand-in for Gamora. Chris Pratt did post the video after Endgame had hit theaters, but it had only been out for about a week at that point. Elizabeth Olsen shared a similar backstage video, and hers featured Chris Hemsworth admonishing her for violating the no cameras on set rule. Final battle. Everyone knows one of the most exciting parts of Endgame was the big battle at the end, which featured pretty much all the MCU characters we've come to know and love over the years. It was such an exciting moment that even the stars of the film couldn't stop talking about it in the lead up to the release. Scarlett Johansson isn't even in the scene since she took a tumble off the cliffs of Vormir beforehand. But she revealed to Stephen Colbert that the scene featured 32 different characters. Anthony Mackie compared the scene to the Battle of Wakanda and said fans could expect to see about 40 heroes. But it was Sebastian Stan who really went overboard with the specifics. At Ace Comic-Con, he referenced the same scene Johansson and Mackie had talked about, but this time he dropped some serious names. He claimed to have seen Tom Holland and Dave Bautista, whose characters had perished during the decimation of Infinity War. He also revealed that there's a scene featuring Samuel L. Jackson, Michael Douglas, and Michelle Pfeiffer. At the time, Ant-Man and the Wasp hadn't been released, and for all we knew, Janet Van Dyne was still trapped in the quantum realm. Finding out that she not only survived but made it into the fourth Avengers movie was kind of a big deal. Fake scripts. Some stars, we're looking at you, Mark Ruffalo and Tom Holland, just can't seem to keep their mouths shut. But thankfully, Marvel Studios does have some stars that it can trust. Namely, Benedict Cumberbatch, who is often tasked with trying to make sure Tom Holland doesn't spoil things. Hey, he does the best he can. Remember, he only has magic powers in the movies. But that doesn't mean Cumberbatch himself isn't above bending the rules every now and then. Marvel gives its actors fake and incomplete scripts in order to prevent secrets from getting out. Often, actors won't know the details of a scene and who is really involved until it's time to film. But on the set of Infinity War, Cumberbatch managed to get his hands on a genuine copy of the script with no fake-outs or missing scenes. According to Cumberbatch, he had to play dumb and convince Marvel it was the only way he could understand how his character was supposed to act. Doctor Strange may have gotten to look at over 14 million possible futures, but Cumberbatch actually got to look at the Infinity War script prior to filming. They're both pretty impressive in their own ways. Drax the Spoiler. Drax the Destroyer may be a man of few words, but we can't say the same about Guardians of the Galaxy actor Dave Bautista. As you no doubt remember, Drax was one of the many characters who perished during the decimation of Infinity War. But this didn't stop Bautista from commenting heavily about his role in the movie Avengers Endgame. He stated that the Guardians would be featured in the movie despite the fact that pretty much everyone but Rocket and Nebula didn't make it past Infinity War. In his defense, Bautista used the old "nobody told me not to say anything" excuse. He admitted to feeling guilty about possibly spoiling the movie, but said he was never instructed not to. Somehow we kind of find it hard to believe that Marvel Studios never said anything about not spoiling the major movie event that was Endgame. Although we do have to admit we wouldn't be totally furious if he dropped some spoilers about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, since it feels like we've waited forever for that movie. And it's not even going to make it into Marvel's Phase 4. Creative differences. Earlier, we called out Thor: The Dark World for being one of the worst movies in the MCU library, but let's not forget about The Incredible Hulk. While it may not be terrible, it's definitely forgettable, and it's the only time we saw Edward Norton as Bruce Banner instead of Mark Ruffalo. When Marvel announced Ruffalo would be replacing Norton for the Avengers, they released a statement saying they were looking for an actor who embodies the creativity and collaborative spirit of our other talented cast members. Well, that's a fancy way of insulting Norton. They claimed money wasn't the issue, but it was clear something had gone wrong between Norton and Marvel. A representative for Norton called out Marvel's comments as being mean-spirited and accusatory. Apparently, they didn't get the memo about not making this guy angry. After all of this ugliness went down, Norton reacted to the situation years later, claiming that he did the best he could with the subpar script he was given. Supposedly, Norton was promised creative freedom and input on the script, but that never ended up happening. He said he was fine with moving on from the Hulk and that he is glad it's not the role he's most associated with. Personally, we can't get enough behind-the-scenes videos like the one shared by Chris Pratt and Elizabeth Olsen. Do you think the rules were meant to be broken, or should they be taking their jobs a little more seriously? Let us know what you think in the comments section below, and then click on that subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Bye for now.